So today we're tackling a word that is, well, I think it's one of the most powerful and maybe most misused in history. Freedom.
It really is. And our goal here is to just trace its core meaning, to see how it shifted so radically through philosophy.
Right, from being tied to virtue and reason, all the way to this idea of purely individual creation.
And it's a fascinating journey because if you go back to the beginning, the entire Western tradition starts from really the same place.
Which is that freedom is not absolute.
Exactly. For both Plato and Aristotle, true liberty was always limited by higher realities, like truth and justice.
Okay, so let's start with Plato. His view was more metaphysical, right?
It was. For him, freedom was about the soul's ascent. It's like escaping the shadows in the cave. You become free by acting according to reason, by knowing what's true.
Instead of being a slave to your impulses or your ignorance.
Precisely. And Aristotle, he sort of brings that idea down to earth, into the city.
Into the polis.
Yes. He talks about what he called teleological freedom, which is a fancy way of saying goal-oriented.
And the goal is what? Self-mastery.
Self-mastery and virtuous action within the community. He makes a sharp distinction between that and just doing as one pleases. He called that mere license, not real freedom.
So that's the classical foundation. Freedom constrained by virtue. And as you're listening, keep in mind, you are experiencing a unique two-voice AI conversation powered by Google's Notebook LM for deeper, more dynamic book analysis.
So after the Greeks, we shift into theological constraints, and the stakes get, well, a lot higher.
With Augustine.
With Augustine.
Yeah.
He introduces this powerful tension between God's omniscience and our own free will. Freedom is where we're morally responsible, but salvation ultimately depends on grace.
So our individual effort is framed against this much bigger divine picture.
It is, and that really sets the stage for Aquinas, who tried to synthesize it all. He defined freedom as the power to act or not to act.
But, and this is the key, it had to be grounded in reason. It had to align with natural law.
Exactly. If your actions go against that rational or moral law, you aren't actually free. You're just choosing error.
Then the Enlightenment comes along, and the whole definition gets a monumental overhaul with Kant.
A huge overhaul. Kant basically says, forget external divine law or even natural law. True freedom is autonomy.
Which is a radical idea.
Yeah.
It's the capacity to create the moral law for yourself, just using reason.
Yes. And the practical application is everything. For Kant, you are only truly free when your actions respect the dignity of every other rational person. It's the golden rule, but elevated to a universal test.
Your freedom has to respect everyone else's.
That's the core of it. And that's really the high point of this rational constraint. You know, before we dive into the total rejection of these ideas, if you're looking for more AI book analysis, summaries, and critiques to inspire reflection, check out Mindful Moments, our YouTube channel.
Okay, so now for the great existential break. Nietzsche.
Nietzsche. He comes in and challenges all of it. Plato's truth, Kant's universal moral law. He saw them as, frankly, weaknesses.
So for him, what is freedom?
It's a painful existential project. It's about self-overcoming, about creating and affirming your own values, transcending all those external authorities.
But even in the modern era, there were pushbacks against that kind of radical individualism. Hannah Arendt, for example.
A great point. She drew a really important line between what she called philosophical freedom, that internal I will, and political freedom.
Which is about collective action, the I can.
Yes, freedom is something you build with other people in the public sphere.
And that brings us to Mortimer Adler, who kind of synthesizes all these limits into one critical test.
He does. He just asserts that liberty is a limited good. The ultimate constraint is justice. Your freedom should never, ever be allowed to cause harm or undermine fairness. That's the test.
So the big takeaway across all these centuries seems to be that the ideal of freedom is always grounded in reason, justice, and respect for others.
I think so. Which leaves you with Adler's challenge. Every claim to freedom has to pass the test of rational reciprocity.
Meaning, would your claim still hold up if the roles were reversed?
Exactly. If it doesn't, you're not claiming liberty, you're just claiming license.
Click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary. Subscribe, share, purchase via link, and think rationally.
See the many genre-based book podcasts at Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go.